Do you feel like you need to forgive somebody but really don't know how? Well, in this video, we're going to share our favorite 3 resources and tools that we've used to forgive others, ourselves, and each other. All of that and more coming up next.
Hey everyone, we're Drew and Katie Taylor, and we're passionate about helping you reach new heights in your faith and in your relationships. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe and leave a comment in below so we can pray for you by name.
Forgiveness is hard. It's something that we all need to grow in. And so, really, the motivation of these videos is for us to provide the experience that we have. So, I have a master's in marriage and family counseling, Drew has one in theology, and then just our practical life experience over the last 10 years of marriage, in work, in life with people.
Yeah.
We need forgiveness. So, let's define some terms. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness is choosing to not keep bringing up an incident and rehashing it, especially internally, building the story within our minds. It's desiring to no longer hurt the other person because they hurt me. And also, forgiveness is not a one time thing. Every time that this incident comes up, this experience, we're going to be able to reveal a new way that it's affecting us. And when that happens, then we have to go through the forgiveness process again, acknowledging where that hurt is new in our lives.
Yeah, and it's important to realize that forgiveness is an act of the will. And so, even though you may not feel like forgiving someone, it is still forgiving someone to decide that you're going to forgive someone. But with that being said, it's also important to realize what forgiveness isn't. So, forgiveness isn't just enabling someone to keep doing what they're doing or to continue to be in a bad situation. Forgiveness is knowing that God is the judge of other people's souls, and so you're giving that job back to him.
Forgiveness is also not reconciliation because reconciliation requires that the other person has a desire to change, and we can't really control that.
Nope.
But we can control ourselves and we can control the way that we view others. And so that leads to my first resource is Dr. Alan Hunt's book, Everybody Needs to Forgive Somebody. And why I love this book is it's really short. It's really easy to read. It's 12 real life stories that are people learning how to forgive and to offer that forgiveness to somebody else. And so when I read this book 10 years ago, it really helped me to look at a lot of relationships that had wounded me, had hurt me, had done terrible things to me. And so some of that was my friends growing up. Some of that was teachers or my parents, or in my case, I had experiences of sexual abuse and assault in my past that I had to heal in order to really accept the forgiveness that God was trying to offer me. And so in this book, I was able to really learn that one of the biggest barriers to forgiveness is often our desire to punish the other, to hold them accountable, to have them experience the consequences of their actions. Well, in all reality, they typically don't even know that you're angry at them, that you're withholding forgiveness, and that you desire to hurt them, or you're blatant about that, and it really is a toxic relationship or environment. And so as a result, the only person that you're really hurting is yourself because we are blocking God's grace for us, for Him to be able to offer us healing in how we acted in those situations or caused those situations, or just in our day-to-day life, the hurts that we've caused other people as a result of those experiences. And so when we are withholding that forgiveness, again, the only person that we're really hurting is ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's really important for just to realize that forgiveness is, yes, it's about what someone did to you, but it's really about healing yourself and opening yourself up to God's grace by forgiving other people.
Yeah. And so how do we do that? Oh, first, that book, another reason I love it is because you can get it for free
Oh, that's right.
on dynamiccatholic.com. We'll put the link down below in the description. All you do is pay shipping and handling so you can read those stories today and they can help you learn how to apply forgiveness in any of your life situations.
And I think it's also good to hear it in story format because it's easy academically to say, oh, you should forgive people, but to read the stories to see how to apply that and how other people have applied that in their life is really helpful for me to be able to use some of these tools.
And then sometimes it's not as much theory
Yeah.
as it is practical application to something I can relate to and hear my own story. And the next resource that I really love is Fearless and Free by Walking with Purpose. It is a 6-week Bible study that includes some videos and daily ability to walk through scripture. And so if you've had an encounter with Christ and you know who he is and you really want to work through healing,
Mhm.
this is a great study, either in a small group or personal study. I've done it both ways and had really profound experiences both times, and really will help you develop a daily prayer life. So, in this,
Mhm.
the forgiveness, how this applies to forgiveness is she provides a script. Lisa walks through this idea that what I need to say when I have a situation that comes up, and so this is daily forgiveness,
Yeah.
daily encounters that rub wrong, that things happen, that just living in close proximity
Yeah.
to another person will ultimately result in some friction and some need to forgive
Yes.
in a good way. And so the script is, I am feeling X and I am making up this story as a result.
Mm.
And right away, I'm bringing it about me and I'm removing the blame and I'm really communicating, hey, this is how I'm feeling and this is the lies that I'm starting to create that is going to cause a long-term division in our relationship.
Yeah, and I really like the script because one, it takes the edge off of just opening up that communication and talking about this stuff. And then I also like it because I like to take my feelings and stuff them deep down in a trash can and then shove the lid on top and never talk about them. But what this script does is it gives it, you name the frustrations, the feelings, the anger, and then you're saying, here is the result of that. Here's the stories that I'm making up because of this. And I think it opens up more than anything just the opportunity to be able to talk about it and then the opportunity to be able to hear the other person and to start to understand them as well.
So I'm going to use this trash can example. And I think that it can often look like this: you're a terrible husband and you don't care about me at all. And really, what might have happened
Mm,
is I'm feeling very unsupported and that you don't love me
mhm,
because you didn't take out the trash and you don't see how hard I'm working around this house and you do nothing and you are not a helpful father, husband around this place. As a result, I'm creating that lie that you are not helpful. And I'm creating this story that you don't really care about me and you don't really love me and you don't want to serve me. And when I am able to express that and all the truth and what's actually behind my feelings, then Drew's able to come in.
yeah, and say, I didn't even know the trash needed to be taken out.
Yes. And that allows us to again remove the blame and have an honest conversation that he goes, oh, me taking out the trash would make you feel loved.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I think oftentimes in relationships, like people are trying to express love. And so the fact that Katie in this example wasn't feeling loved because the trash wasn't taken out. I was trying to express love in other ways. And now I can just go, oh, well, now it's easy to make you feel loved. I go take out the trash. So go take out the trash. Um,
yes. And I think another example of how this can look is we really need to confess when we've built up these lies,
mm,
when we've allowed them to really come into our mind, we've rehashed it, we've created this story. And so, what that can look like is I was reading this study. I took it to adoration, and God very quickly convicted me that while my mom was visiting this summer, that I had started to build some lies up about our relationship. And so I was able to go to her and say, I confess to you that I am building up a story in my mind that is hurting our relationship because I feel
mm,
abandoned, unloved, like you don't care about my children or that you didn't want them. And I'm building up these stories in my mind of how you look at our family dynamic now that it's growing, that it's going to become a bigger family, that it is a bigger family. And in reality, we're also able to look at it and go, oh, you were locked in a foreign country for a year. And it's not that you don't love me. And it's not that you don't love my children. It's not that you didn't want to be at her birth. It's that
she literally
literally
could
could
not.
not because of the pandemic. She was literally locked in a foreign country and that she has wounds and she has hurts from
Mm,
missing that year of experience. And we're able to break down those barriers immediately and have an honest conversation that facilitates a great rest of our trip, an honest conversation that allows for healing to come in, for us to really recognize the hurt that had happened that was outside of her control completely, and start to heal that for the long term. The other aspect that I really like about this book is the idea that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And really, what that allows is for me, especially in big wounds. So these are big ways that you have been abandoned, that
Mm.
you have been hurt, that you have been assaulted, that you have been abused, that you can come and look with that at that other person with compassion, to grow in empathy and go, where have you been hurt? What in your life made you think that sexual abuse was good,
Mhm.
was right, was healing, it was what sexual intimacy is supposed to be? Like,
Yeah.
holy smokes. And so how can I pray for you? Because those people who hurt me, I want them in heaven
Mhm.
with me. I ultimately want their salvation. I ultimately want their healing. And so when I'm able to look at it and go, hurt people. And then another great line in this study is the idea that I can't love when I am busy self protecting. And so if I'm self
Mm.
protecting because I haven't healed those wounds or those traumas from my childhood, that I am unable to love Drew with the fullness of my heart. I'm unable to love my children with the fullness of my heart. And so by healing those and offering forgiveness to these people who have wounded me, I'm able to actually grant forgiveness easier to Drew when he hurts me in little ways, and to better love him and my children.
Yeah, and that's a really important point of starting to understand other people is to realize that we all fall from the lineage of Adam and Eve. We fell from the tree. And so we are sinners. We are not perfect. It is hard, even in looking at parenting. Uh, Oftentimes your parents are doing the best that they can. We as parents are doing the best that we can. And parenting is really hard. And so we know that there are going to be ways that our children are going to get hurt. Um, and so as you just look at those people that have hurt you, just it's taking a step back and realizing that they have been hurt in the past. They're probably self-protecting and they may or may not know that they're hurting you, but you can just empathize with that to be able to look at them. If you had someone, a 14-year-old guy or girl who came to you who was confessing, all these things about how they'd been hurt, you would have a lot more compassion for them and empathy for them. But it's so much harder to be able to see that and have compassion on yourself.
Yeah. The reality is that God the Father sees those wounds, and he doesn't say to you that they don't matter. We need to ignore them and you need to move on. What he says is, let me be the one to take this battle. Let me be the one to fight for you. Let me be the one to offer justice. And by surrendering that to him, what the study really teaches is the idea that we are then able to experience his healing and his grace when we remove that job of justice. That leads me to my third favorite resource, is this book, Habits for a Healthy Marriage, a handbook for Catholic couples. And this really takes psychology with Catholic theology and helps couples learn how to root out sin and grow in virtue for the sake of their marriage. And the first is forgiveness. And so really, in a marriage, in this intimate relationship, it's one, remember, forgiveness is an act of the will. And so it's choosing to see the best in the other person. And so when my anger flares, I have a choice right then to lash back out or to internally start saying, I want to understand and I want to forgive. I want to understand and I want to forgive. I want to understand and I want to forgive. I may no longer be listening, but at least I'm not yelling. And so internally, I'm starting to remind myself of how I want to treat this person, my spouse, with compassion. And this is immediately the exercise that we can start to bring into a relationship.
Mhm. I think one important thing I learned is that anger isn't something that we should act upon, but is really an indicator of probably a past wound, or maybe even a past expectation that you didn't even know that you had.
I think it's really important to remember that anger is not the place that we should make a decision,
Mhm.
but should be used to diagnose.
Yeah.
So, what caused that to trigger? Why was I responding in that way? What mistrust do
Yeah.
I have in this circumstance that has resulted in ultimately when we look at sin,
Mhm.
the Dr. Bob Sheets will talk about the idea that all sin is from the place of ungodly self-reliance. And so when we look at this circumstance, it's often that something that has happened to me results in me not trusting Drew that he has the best interest for me. So I am defensive, or I don't trust God because he doesn't have what's best for me because he's not good. Because of X, Y, and Z experience, I can prove that that's the case. And so when those lies have rooted very deeply in our hearts, one of the things that this book really encourages us to do is to sit down in a long term forgiveness and go back to those wounds, to those initial hurts, and look at the people that are hurting us and say, I want to forgive you and I want to understand you. And so, in prayer, really offering that and asking them to show you what was their experience in childhood. What was their experience that resulted in them saying that to you, doing that to you, hurting you in that way? And then being able to do that for ourselves as well, to go back to those incidences of places that we felt unloved, uncherished, unprotected, and offer ourselves compassion, forgiveness for the choices that we made that resulted in us experiencing maybe more hurt
Yeah.
than even what was being brought to us, or that we had experienced a hurt and then we lashed out and hurt somebody else, to be able to sit down with ourselves and offer compassion in that prayer.
Yeah. And I think when you look at anger, people are often don't even know that they're being angry, or they think that they are using righteous anger.
Mhm. Yes. And righteous anger is concerned about the rights of another. Unrighteous anger is when I am looking for power and control. And so it is when I feel powerlessness, when I feel out of control, when I don't trust God. So, again, coming back to that ungodly self reliance, I'm really clamoring in that circumstance to try to find my own comfort and my own peace and my own control. And so instead of allowing that to come from God who loves me, from the people He has put into my life that love me and want what's best for me, I'm trying to bring that about in my own way.
Yeah, and once you realize what those triggers are for the anger, now you can start to take a look back, to take a look at where those wounds are, and then how those have led to some type of expectation that is not being met. Because that is something that is super dangerous. Is you can't really have righteous anger if you haven't expressed the this expectation that you want from your spouse or from some other relationship.
Mhm. And so we will do a whole video on how to set expectations
Mhm.
in marriage, how to communicate expectations. It's when I get angry because Drew is late from work, and yet he didn't tell me what time he was going to be home, but I think he should be home roughly around 5 p.m. I mean, he went to work at 5 a.m., so that should be about right, right? And then I sit there and he's late, kids are exploding, dinner's not being made or not going well, or no one's eating anything, and I've been fighting in this. And then he walks in with a big smile on his face, like, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Ah!" And so this reality that that's because we didn't have that communication and that
Mhm.
expectation of, hey, if it's going to be after 5 p.m., I need to be told, and I need a text message, and I need some type of, if you can, in these circumstances. And so when we build those communication strategies within our marriage, we're able to avoid maybe some of these needs to forgive. And again, coming back to, I want to forgive
Yes,
and I
I want
want to
to understand.
understand, and then turning and asking questions
Yeah.
that allow me to begin to understand, that are not judgmental to poke holes in where your plan was flawed, hurtful, and stupid, but instead to ask questions that are legitimate, like, what was your goal in this? Where, how did you think this was going to help our family? How can I support you in this decision? Where do you see my role in this? And allow him to start thinking those through, to really explain to you
Mm.
I his point of view, because ultimately my spouse does want what's best for me,
It's true.
and yours does too. So we will be doing a whole marriage series. So please stay tuned. If you have questions about marriage and family, please put that in the comments below. Know that we are praying for you. We'll put all these links in that we referenced, all these books, all these resources in the description. So check those out. And until next time, we are praying for you and for the people that you need to offer forgiveness to. God bless.